I signed the deed to the cottage in Astor Cove because I was desperate for silence, not a vacation. At 33, I finally had a front door that belonged to me and the sound of the ocean to drown out the burnout. I thought I had escaped the noise until my sister called with a bright, terrifying announcement. She was bringing 12 friends for a getaway. She called it a visit, but I should have known it was an invasion. The ink was barely dry on the closing documents when I felt the first wave of nausea mixed with giddy relief. It was done. The single-story shingle cottage on the edge of Astor Cove was mine. Well, technically, it belonged to Shoreline Holding Company, a limited liability company I had formed solely for this purchase. That detail mattered. After the year I had survived, anonymity was not a luxury. It was a structural requirement. I sat in the quiet of my car, staring at the thick envelope of paperwork in the passenger seat. 33 years old. I said the number out loud to the dashboard. 33. It felt old enough to know better, yet young enough to start over. The engine idled, a soft hum that vibrated through the steering wheel and into my palms. I had spent the last decade building a career in graphic design that looked successful on paper, but felt like a slow drowning in practice. Then came the breakup with Mark, a man who had treated our shared apartment like a stage for his own emotional theater, followed by a landlord dispute that had left me sleeping on a friend's couch for 3 months. I needed walls that no one could take away. I needed a door that locked from the inside, and a deed that did not have anyone else's name on it. The drive to Astor Cove took 2 hours from the city. As the highway dissolved into winding coastal roads, the air changed. It grew heavier, smelling of salt and damp pine. My heart rate, which had been resting at a permanent sprint for months, began to slow. The house was not a mansion. It was a modest gray structure with white trim that had seen better days and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides like a protective arm. It sat near the end of a cul-de-sac, separated from the dunes by a thicket of seagrass and determined scrub oaks. It was perfect. I parked in the gravel driveway. The silence was absolute, save for the distant, rhythmic thumping of the Atlantic Ocean. I stepped out, my boots crunching on the stones. I did not have moving trucks coming until Monday. For this weekend, it was just me, a sleeping bag, a single box of essentials, and the keys. Entering the house felt like stepping into a church. The air inside was stale but cool. I walked through the living room, trailing my fingers along the wainscoting. I checked the windows. I checked the locks. I checked the closets. Empty. All of it. Empty and waiting. My ritual for the first night was specific. I unpacked the single box I had brought, a bottle of red wine, a corkscrew, 1 glass, a Bluetooth speaker, a heavy wool blanket, and a container of Thai takeout I had picked up on the main road coming in. I sat on the floor of the living room, my back against the wall where I planned to eventually put a sofa. I poured the wine. I played a playlist of instrumental jazz, keeping the volume low so it would not compete with the sound of the ocean coming through the screen door. I took a sip of wine and closed my eyes. This is it, I thought. This is peace. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was pride, certainly, but it was braided tightly with guilt. There was a voice in the back of my head, sounding suspiciously like my mother, asking who I thought I was to own a beach house. Who was I to take up this much space? To hide away here while the rest of the world hustled and suffered? I had bought this place to heal from burnout, but the burnout had rewired my brain to interpret rest as laziness and safety as selfishness. I took another sip, willing the voice to silence itself. I watched the shadows lengthen across the floorboards as the sun began to dip below the horizon line. I was safe. No one knew I was here except the closing attorney and the utility companies. Then, my phone buzzed against the hardwood floor. The sound was jarring, a mechanical intrusion that shattered the mood instantly. I looked at the screen. Kelsey, my older sister. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I could claim I was driving. I could claim I had no signal, but the old conditioning kicked in. The reflex that said ignoring family was a cardinal sin. I picked it up. Hey, Kels, I said. keeping my voice level. "Nora!" Her voice was a sonic boom. It was not just loud, it was projecting a level of energy that made me instinctively pull the phone away from my ear. "I am so glad I caught you," she said. "I have been vibrating with excitement all day. I literally cannot sit still." I took a deep breath. "What is going on?" "Okay, so, do not freak out," she said, which was usually the prologue to something that would definitely make me freak out. But I was talking to the girls, and we were thinking about how you just got that place, and honestly, we are all so proud of you, like, incredibly proud, and we want to celebrate you. I stiffened. I had not told Kelsey the specific date I was closing. I had been vague on purpose. I had said sometime this month. "Celebrate me how?" I asked. "So, I am coming down next weekend," she announced, "and I'm bringing a few people. It is going to be super low-key. Just a tiny getaway. We need it. You need it. It is going to be a bonding thing." I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. "Who is we?" "Just some friends," she said, her voice breezy, skipping over the details. "And before you start spiraling, I already organized everything. We will bring the food. We will bring the drinks. You literally do not have to lift a finger. You are the guest of honor in your own house." "Kelsey," I said, sitting up straighter against the wall. "I just got the keys today. There is no furniture. I am sleeping on the floor." "That is fine," she said. "We love glamping. We will bring air mattresses. It adds to the vibe." "How many people?" I asked. There was a pause, a hesitation that lasted a fraction of a second too long. "Like, 12?" she said. "12?" I repeated. The number hung in the air. Absurd and terrifying. "Kelsey, you cannot bring 12 people here. This is a 2-bedroom cottage. It has 1 bathroom. It will be cozy," she insisted. "Look, half of them are couples, so they share beds. Well, air mattresses. It is not a big deal. We are not high maintenance." I could hear noise in the background on her end, clinking glasses, laughter, a baseline thumping. "Who are you with right now?" I asked. "I am just at drinks with the crew," she said. And then I heard it. A voice in the background, distinct and clear. "Is she cool with it?" And Kelsey's voice, muffled as if she had covered the microphone with her hand but failed to cover it completely. "Yeah, she is fine. She just needs to process." She came back on the line. "Nora, you there?" "I am here," I said, my grip on the phone tightening. "Kelsey, I cannot host 12 people next weekend. I literally do not have toilet paper. I do not have towels. The water heater is the size of a keg. This is not a venue. It is my house. Nora." "Stop," she said, her tone shifting from sugary to sharp. "You are doing that thing you do." "What thing?" "The thing where you look for problems instead of solutions. You always disappear when you get something good. You got this amazing beach house, and your first instinct is to hoard it? To lock everyone out?" "I am not hoarding it," I said, feeling the familiar defensive crouch. "I am moving in. I need time to settle. We are family." "Nora," she said, and the word landed like a verdict. "Family should not need permission to see you. I already told everyone it was handled. They booked time off work. They rented cars. Do you want me to tell them my sister is too selfish to let them crash on her floor for 2 nights? The manipulation was seamless. She had pivoted from asking to accusing in under 30 seconds. She had staked her reputation on my compliance, and now she was holding me hostage with it. "It is not about being selfish," I said, but my voice was losing its firmness. "It is about logistics. We will handle logistics," she said, sensing the weakness. "I promise. We will be ghosts. You will not even know we are there. We just want to breathe some ocean air and toast to your success. Why is that so hard for you to accept?" I rubbed my temples. The peace of the empty house was gone, replaced by the humming anxiety of impending chaos. "I need to think about it." I said, "Nora, seriously." She said, "It is happening. Just say yes and stop making it weird." I looked around the dark living room. The shadows suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. "Fine," I whispered, "but there have to be rules." "Yay!" she screamed, creating a feedback spike in my ear. "You are the best. I knew you would come through. I love you." She hung up before I could retract it. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the house returning. But it felt different now. It felt fragile. I had surrendered my sanctuary before I had even spent a full night in it. I picked up my phone again. I knew I needed to establish boundaries immediately, or the weekend would turn into a disaster. I opened a text message to Kelsey. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, deleted, and retyped. I wanted to be firm but not aggressive. I wanted to be clear but not bitchy. It was the eternal tightrope walk of the younger sister. Okay, here are the ground rules if you are coming. 1. Quiet hours start at 10 in the evening. The neighbors are close. 2. No extra guests. 12 is the absolute maximum, and that is already pushing it. 3. No parties. This is a chill weekend only. 4. You guys handle all your own trash and cleanup. I read it over. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like something a normal person would respect. But as I hit send, my stomach twisted. I felt physically sick. I knew Kelsey. I knew that to her, a boundary was not a line in the sand. It was a dare. It was a challenge to see how far she could step over it before I snapped. And she knew that I rarely snapped. I usually just bent until I broke. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house sounded like a premonition. The next morning, I woke up stiff. The floor had been unforgiving, and the morning sun was glaring through the uncurtained windows. I made instant coffee using tap water and stood on the porch, staring at the dunes. "Good morning," I jumped, spilling a little coffee on my hand. A woman was standing on the gravel driveway, near the edge of my property line. She looked to be in her 60s, with short, steel-gray hair and wearing a pristine windbreaker. She was holding a leash attached to a golden retriever that was sitting politely at her feet. "Hi," I said, wiping my hand on my jeans. "I did not hear you walk up. I am Maris," she said, offering a small, tight smile. "Maris Holloway. I live 2 doors down, the Blue Cottage. Hi." "Maris, I am Nora. I just bought the place." "I know," she said. "We saw the sold sign go up. We were wondering who bought it." "Shoreline Holding Company, right?" The specificity of her knowledge made me blink. "Yes, that is me." "Well, welcome to Astor Cove," she said. "It is a quiet street. We like it that way." "Thank you," I said. "I like it that way too." She nodded, her eyes scanning the house behind me. "You have received the welcome packet from the association, I assume?" "The association?" I asked. "The Astor Dunes Community Association," she said. "We are not technically a homeowners association in the legal sense of a gated community, but we have a very active charter. We manage the private road, the dune preservation, and the noise ordinances." "Oh," I said, "I think my lawyer might have mentioned something about covenants." "You will want to read them," she said, "especially if you are planning on having company. We have strict rules about occupancy. Short-term rentals are heavily regulated here. We had an issue last summer with a party house. The police were involved. We do not want a repeat of that." My stomach dropped again. She was looking at me with a mixture of politeness and warning. She was testing me, trying to figure out if I was going to be a neighbor or a nuisance. "I am not renting it out," I assured her. "I am going to be living here." "That is good to hear," she said. "But just so you know, the occupancy limit for a house of this square footage is usually capped at 8 people for overnight stays, unless they are immediate family, and noise violations carry fines." She adjusted her grip on the leash. "I am not trying to scare you, Nora. We just protect our peace here. I understand." I said, "I appreciate the information." She gave a small wave and continued her walk. I watched her go, feeling a new layer of anxiety sedimenting on top of the old one. Kelsey was bringing 12 people. That was 50% over the limit Maris had just casually mentioned. I went back inside and immediately searched for the number for the Astor Dunes Community Association. I needed to know exactly what I was walking into. I needed facts to use as ammunition against Kelsey. A man answered on the second ring. "Astor Dunes Association. This is Elliot." "Hi, Elliot," I said. My name is Nora Turner. I just purchased the property at 42 Seaglass Lane. Oh, yes, Ms. Turner, he said. His voice was pleasant, professional, but clipped. We have your file right here. Shoreline Holding Company. Welcome to the neighborhood. Thank you. I said, I met a neighbor this morning, Maris Halloway, and she mentioned some regulations regarding guest limits. I wanted to clarify them to make sure I'm in compliance. Excellent, Elliot said. We love proactive owners. Let me pull up the bylaws for your specific lot. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. Here we are, he said. For a 2-bedroom dwelling with your septic capacity, the maximum overnight occupancy is strictly 8 persons. Daytime guests can go up to 12, but all quiet hours begin at 10 in the evening sharp. What happens if there are more than 8? I asked. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Well, we document it. We have patrol officers who monitor the street parking and noise levels. The first violation is a warning. The second is a $500 fine. The third is $1,000 and a mandatory hearing with the board. If the property is suspected of being an unlicensed rental business, we can move to issue a cease and desist on use. I see, I said, my voice faint. Is there a concern? He asked. No, I lied. No concern. Just wanted to be clear. I hung up. I stood in the middle of my empty kitchen. If Kelsey brought 12 people, I was starting my tenure in this neighborhood with a violation. I was confirming Maris Halloway's suspicions before I even unpacked my clothes. I grabbed my phone to call Kelsey. I was going to tell her it was impossible. I was going to blame the association. I was going to say, look, it is not me. It is the law. You cannot bring 12 people. But before I could dial, a notification popped up on my screen. It was a text from Kelsey, but it was not just a text. It was a screenshot. It was an image of a new group chat she had created. The title of the group was Astor Cove Reset Week. I scanned the list of participants. I did not recognize the names. Talia, Brent, Chloe, Javi, Sarah, Mike, and 5 others. But it was the pinned message at the top of the chat that made the blood drain from my face. Nora said yes. The beach house is ours for the weekend. Get ready for the best content trip of the year. Pack cute. We are going full coastal grandmother chic. I read it again. The beach house is ours. Not Nora invited us. Not we are visiting Nora. Ours. And then, the replies in the screenshot. OMG, yes. I need this so bad. Is there a hot tub? Can I bring my drone? Kelsey, you are a magician. She was rewriting reality in real time. She had taken my reluctant, coerced, conditional fine and turned it into an open invitation for a content trip. I felt the walls of the cottage closing in. I looked at the text I had sent her the night before. The list of rules. She had not replied to it. She had not acknowledged it. She had simply bypassed it and gone straight to the victory lap with her friends. I sat down on the floor again, pulling my knees to my chest. I could cancel. The thought was a desperate, flashing neon sign in my mind. I could text Kelsey right now and say, something came up. The plumbing burst. The association said no. I am sick. I could lock the doors, turn off the lights, and drive back to the city. I could make the house unavailable. I imagined the relief of it, the silence, the avoidance. But then I thought about why I was here. I thought about the breakup with Mark, where I had spent 2 years making myself smaller and smaller to accommodate his moods, avoiding conflicts until I had no personality left. I thought about the landlord who had bullied me out of my security deposit because he knew I hated confrontation. I had bought this house to stop living like that. I had bought this house to plant a flag in the earth and say, I exist. I have space. I have rights. If I ran away now, if I let Kelsey run me out of my own sanctuary before I had even hung a picture on the wall, I would never truly own this place. It would just be another place where I was hiding. I looked at the phone. I looked at the group chat screenshot. I am not canceling. I said to the empty room, but my voice shook. I was not canceling. But I was also not leading. I was waiting for the wave to hit me. Hoping I wouldn't drown. I spent the rest of the week in a state of high-functioning dread. I bought air mattresses, not because I wanted them, but because I was terrified of looking like a bad host. I bought extra towels. I stocked the fridge with basic items: eggs, milk, sparkling water, trying to anticipate the needs of 12 strangers. Every time I bought something, I felt a little piece of my resentment harden. I was preparing for an event I did not want, for people I did not know, in a house that was supposed to be my escape from exactly this kind of performative labor. Friday arrived with a gray, overcast sky. The ocean was choppy, the water a bruised purple color. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone pinged. "We are 20 minutes out," Kelsey texted. "Get the wine open." I stood on the porch, wearing a thick cardigan, wrapping my arms around myself. I watched the end of the road. I told myself I would be firm. I told myself I would enforce the rules. I told myself I would introduce myself to these people as the owner, not the doormat. Then I saw them. It was not just one car. It was 2 massive, black SUVs, followed by a convertible that looked entirely impractical for the weather. They turned onto the gravel driveway, kicking up dust. Doors opened. Voices spilled out, loud and overlapping, shattering the quiet of the cul-de-sac. I saw Kelsey step out of the lead SUV. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, looking like she had stepped out of a magazine spread about Hampton's weekends. She spotted me on the porch and threw her arms up. "We are here!" she screamed. I watched them unload. It looked like a military operation. Coolers, suitcases, garment bags, a ring light on a tripod. Someone was carrying a portable speaker that was already blasting a pop song. This was not a low-key getaway. This was a production. I walked down the steps to meet them, forcing a smile that felt like it was made of glass. Kelsey ran over and hugged me, but the hug felt performative, staged for the benefit of the audience behind her. She smelled of expensive perfume and latte. "You made it," I said. "Barely. The traffic was a nightmare," she said, pulling back. "Guys, come say hi to Nora." The group drifted toward us. They were all beautiful, polished, and terrifyingly cool. They looked like the kind of people who curated their lives for an audience of thousands. "This is Nora," Kelsey announced, gesturing to me like I was a prop. "She is the best sister ever. She is letting us use her place because she is finally learning to live a little." The phrasing hit me in the gut. She is letting us use her place, finally learning to live. "Hi, Nora," a girl with platinum blonde hair chirped. "I am Talia. This place is adorable. It is giving major coastal vibes." "Thanks," I said. "Just a reminder. Guys, the neighbors are pretty strict, so we have to keep it—" "Oh, do not worry about it," Kelsey interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "We will be fine. Everyone, grab a bag. Let's get settled before sunset. I want to get a group shot on the deck while the lighting is good." She breezed past me, up the stairs, and into my house. The others followed. A stream of strangers carrying their luggage into my sanctuary. I stood in the driveway for a moment, watching them. I saw a guy vaping as he walked up my wooden steps. I saw a girl dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel that scraped loud, gouging lines into the porch paint. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them to stop, but I didn't. I picked up a cooler that someone had left behind and carried it inside. Following the parade of my own invasion, inside, the energy was overwhelming. The house, which had felt so empty and cavernous an hour ago, was now suffocating. People were everywhere. Shoes were being kicked off in the middle of the hallway. Someone had already opened the fridge and was rearranging my groceries to make room for their beer. Kelsey was in the center of the living room, directing traffic. "Okay, Talia and Brent. You guys take the guest room. Sarah and Mike. You get the pull-out couch. Javi, you are good on the air mattress in the den, right?" She was assigning beds. She had not even asked me where I was sleeping. "Kelsey," I said, trying to cut through the noise. She turned to me, her eyes bright and manic. "What? Isn't this fun? Look how alive the house feels." "Kelsey," I said, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "I told you, 8 people is the limit for sleeping. There are 12 people here." She rolled her eyes. a gesture so familiar it made me feel 6 years old again. Nora, relax. Who is counting? The neighbors are not going to come in and do a head count. Just chill. You are so uptight. I am not uptight. I said, I am liable. You are fine, she said, patting my cheek. Just have a drink. Loosen up. You are bringing down the vibe. She turned back to the room. Okay, guys, who wants a margarita? A cheer went up. I stood there, invisible in my own living room. I watched as someone placed a wet condensation-covered beer bottle directly onto the unfinished wood of my dining table. I reached out and slid a coaster under it. The person didn't even notice. I walked into the kitchen. My first night ritual of silence and wine felt like it had happened a lifetime ago. I looked out the window, across the dunes and the scrub oak. I could see the blue cottage. I saw a figure standing in the window. It was Maris Halloway. She was watching. I stepped back from the window, feeling a flush of shame. I knew what she was seeing. She was seeing exactly what she had predicted. She was seeing the party house. She was seeing the violation. And she was seeing me, the owner who had promised it wouldn't happen, standing there and letting it happen. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. The laughter from the living room was getting louder. The bass from the speaker was vibrating through the floorboards. I had bought this house for peace. And now, surrounded by 12 strangers and my sister's manic ambition, I realized that peace was not something you bought. It was something you had to fight for. And I was terrified that I did not know how to fight. The chaos of the arrival did not settle. It metastasized. I stood in the entryway of my own home, clutching a cooler I had not packed, watching the invasion unfold with a sense of detached horror. Kelsey was not just visiting. She was directing a scene. The 2 black SUVs in the driveway had disgorged not only people but an arsenal of equipment that had no place in a relaxing weekend. I saw ring lights on tripods, collapsible reflector screens, and stacks of matching canvas tote bags embroidered with the words, Astor Cove Reset. This was not a getaway. It was a production. Kelsey stood in the center of the living room, her arms wide, spinning slowly as if she were breathing in the architecture itself. She wore a linen jumpsuit that looked effortless, but probably cost more than my mortgage payment. Okay, listen up, she shouted over the din of 12 people dragging suitcases across my hardwood floors. First rule of the weekend is vibes only. We are here to recharge, reconnect, and create. She spotted me lingering near the kitchen island, looking, I am sure, as pale and rigid as a ghost. She clapped her hands and rushed over, grabbing my shoulders. And this, she announced, turning me to face the room like a prize heifer at a county fair, is our savior, everyone. This is my baby sister, Nora. She is the one making this all possible. A chorus of hi Nora and thanks. Nora rippled through the room. It should have been warm. It should have felt like gratitude. But Kelsey kept her hands on my shoulders, her grip tight, steering me. She is letting us use her place because she is finally learning to live, Kelsey said, her voice dropping into a register of performative pity. She has had such a rough few years. Guys, you have no idea, but she is finally stepping up. She is finally sharing her success. The words landed on me like wet cement, letting us use her place, finally learning to live. She had neatly excised my ownership and replaced it with her own benevolence. I was not the host who had invited them. I was the damaged project she was rehabilitating. I tried to step out from under her hands. Welcome, everyone, I said, my voice sounding thin in the acoustic brightness of the empty room. Just a quick reminder about the shoes. Oh, shoes off, Kelsey interrupted, cutting off my authority before it could take root. We are keeping it pristine for the aesthetic. She winked at me, as if we were co-conspirators, as if she had not just silenced me. I retreated to the kitchen, needing to put physical distance between myself and the performance art happening in my living room. I watched them unpack. It was fascinating in a morbid way. They did not unpack clothes first. They unpacked speakers. They unpacked cocktail shakers. They unpacked a drone case. I saw a guy, I think his name was Javi, walk out onto the back deck. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the dunes, and pulled a vape pen from his pocket. A thick cloud of white vapor drifted up, hanging in the stagnant air before dissolving. I felt a spike of panic. The lease agreement I had signed with the previous owner, and the association rules I had just read, were explicit about smoking. I walked to the sliding glass door and slid it open. "Hey," I said. "Javi?" He turned, smiling lazily. The vape pen was still in his hand. "Yeah?" "I am so sorry," I said, hating the apology that instinctively started every sentence I spoke. "But we cannot smoke or vape on the property. The wind carries it right to the neighbors' windows, and they are super strict." He looked at the pen, then at me, as if I had asked him to stop breathing. "It is just water vapor," he said. "I know," I said, "but the association fines are real. Can you please do it down on the public road?" He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You want me to walk to the street?" "Please," I said. He shook his head, muttering something I could not catch, and shoved the pen into his pocket. He did not walk to the street. He just walked back inside, brushing past me with a look of mild annoyance. I followed him in, feeling the tension in my neck tighten. As I re-entered the living room, a girl with a camera around her neck, Chloe, maybe, cornered me. "Hey, Nora," she said. "Quick question. Where is the best light for golden hour? We want to do a group toast, but the shadows here are kind of harsh." I blinked. "I have been here for 6 hours. I said, "I have no idea." She frowned, checking her phone. "Okay, we will figure it out. Also, is it cool if we move the dining table onto the deck? We want an alfresco dinner vibe." "No," I said, too quickly. "The table is heavy oak. It scratches the floor if you drag it, and it is not treated for outdoor weather." She looked at me with the same expression Javi had used, like I was speaking a foreign language of unnecessary obstacles. "We can lift it." She said, "Please do not move the furniture," I said. Kelsey appeared out of nowhere, sensing the friction like a shark sensing blood in the water. "What is wrong?" she asked, slipping her arm through mine. "She wants to move the dining table outside," I said. And Javi was vaping on the deck. "Kelsey, I told you the rules." "Nora, stop," Kelsey whispered, her smile fixed for the room while her voice dropped to a hiss. "You are being uptight. Do not be the buzzkill in the first hour." "I am not being a buzzkill," I said. "I am being the owner." "You are being dramatic," she corrected. Javi put it away. "Didn't he? And Chloe just wants to make it look nice. We are trying to hype up your house. You should be thanking us." "Thanking you?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes," she said. "Do you know how much exposure this weekend is going to get? Just relax. Go pour yourself a drink. Let me handle the hosting. You are clearly stressed." She squeezed my arm, then released me and clapped her hands again. "Okay, everyone. Change of plans. We are doing the toast on the front porch. The light is better there." The group migrated like a flock of birds, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. I looked at the counter. Someone had left a wet ring from a soda can on the butcher block. I wiped it up with my sleeve. By the time evening fell, the house had transformed. The soft, ambient jazz I had envisioned for my first weekend was replaced by a thumping bass beat that rattled the windows. I came out of the bedroom, where I had spent an hour trying to unpack my small bag and pretending to be busy, to find that my dining table had been commandeered. It was no longer a place for meals. It was a bar. Dozens of bottles of liquor, vodka, tequila, gin, things in artisanal bottles I did not recognize, were clustered in the center. There were bags of ice melting on the wood. There were piles of limes cut directly on the table surface, acid seeping into the grain because no one had used a cutting board. I stared at the limes. The sheer carelessness of it made my breath catch. I walked over and picked up a lime wedge. "Who did this?" I asked. Kelsey was nearby, mixing something in a shaker. She looked up, her face flushed with alcohol and attention. "Did what?" she asked. "Cut limes on the table," I said, without a board. "Kelsey, this is raw wood. The acid eats the finish." "Oh my God." "Nora," she laughed. "It is rustic. It adds character. It is damage. I said. Here, she said, shoving a glass into my hand. Drink this. It is a spicy margarita. It will help you unclench. I set the glass down. I do not want a drink. I want people to respect the house. Everyone pitched in for this, she said, gesturing to the sea of bottles. This is like $500 worth of alcohol. We are stocking you up. Consider it a housewarming gift. I looked at the bottles. I did not drink tequila. I did not drink gin. This was not a gift for me. It was inventory for their party. Relax, she said, turning back to the group. Everyone pitched in. You are getting a free bar out of this. She walked away before I could respond, disappearing into a knot of laughing people. I felt a sudden, sharp exhaustion. The phrase everyone pitched in rang in my ears. It was a trap, by framing it as a contribution. She made my objections seem ungrateful. If I complained about the mess, I was rejecting their generosity. I grabbed a paper towel and started wiping up the lime juice, scrubbing at the sticky spots. No one offered to help. They just reached around me to grab more ice. I needed air. I needed to get away from the noise and the smell of tequila. I walked down the hallway toward the back bedroom, aiming for the quiet of the darker side of the house. The door to the guest room, the one Kelsey had assigned to herself, was slightly ajar. I heard a voice. It was Kelsey. She was speaking in a low, rapid tone. I stopped. I knew I should keep walking, but the tone was different from the manic cheerfulness she had been projecting all day. It was business. Yes, it is perfect, she was saying. The lighting is exactly what we discussed. No, the layout is open concept. We can definitely do the shoot in the morning. There was a pause. She was listening to someone on the other end. Don't worry about her. Kelsey said, she is manageable. I froze. My hand hovered over the wall. Manageable. She is just nervous. Kelsey continued. She has no idea what this is actually for. I told her it is just a girls' trip. Yeah. No. She will sign whatever. She is a pushover if you frame it right. Just send the contract to my email. Not hers. I will handle the signature. I felt the blood drain from my face. I backed away, my socks sliding silently on the floor. I retreated to the bathroom and locked the door. I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were wide, terrified. She is manageable. She was not talking about a sister. She was talking about a handler dealing with a difficult talent, or a landlord dealing with a tenant. She was managing me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The manipulation wasn't just a habit. It was a strategy. She had sold access to my house, and I was just a logistical hurdle she had to clear. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, my hands shaking. I wanted to storm out there. I wanted to scream. But the doubt, the old, familiar doubt, crept in. Maybe I was misunderstanding. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe manageable just meant she was helping me relax. Then came the knock. It was not on the bathroom door. It was on the front door of the house. A heavy, authoritative pounding that cut through the music. The music stopped abruptly. I heard voices hush. I unlocked the bathroom door and ran down the hallway. I reached the living room just as Kelsey opened the front door. A police officer stood there? No, it was not the police. It was a private security guard. He wore a windbreaker with the Astor Dunes Community Association logo on the chest. Good evening, he said. His voice was flat, bored. We have received a noise complaint from the residents to the east. I stepped forward, my heart hammering. I am the owner. I started to say, but Kelsey stepped in front of me. She blocked my body with hers. Oh, I am so sorry, she said, her voice dripping with sudden, disarming charm. She touched her chest, looking wide-eyed and innocent. We were just celebrating my sister's new house. We lost track of time. Is it really that loud? It is 11 o'clock, the guard said. Voices carry over the water. You need to take it inside and keep the volume down. Next visit is a citation. We are shutting it down right now, Kelsey promised. Thank you so much for checking on us. You are doing a great job. She smiled. A dazzling, high-wattage smile. The guard hesitated, then nodded. Keep it down, he said, and turned to walk away. Kelsey closed the door and leaned back against it, letting out a dramatic sigh. Jesus, she said, buzzkills everywhere. Kelsey, I said, my voice trembling. That was the association. That is a strike on my record. She waved a hand at me. It is a warning. Nora, it means nothing. He just wanted to feel important. It means something to me. I said. She pushed off the door and turned to the room. Okay, guys, you heard the man. Party moves to the kitchen. Keep the sliding doors shut. She grabbed my arm and pulled me aside, her voice dropping to a whisper again. Don't look so terrified, she said. The neighbors are just jealous. They see a bunch of young, successful people having fun, and they hate it because they are old and boring. Do not let these small-town weirdos control you. You own this house, remember? Do what you want. She squeezed my arm. Now come have a drink. You look like you saw a ghost. I pulled my arm away. I am going to bed. I said, suit yourself, she said, already turning away. I went to my bedroom and closed the door. I shoved a chair under the handle, a ridiculous, childish gesture of fortification. I lay in the dark, listening to the muffled bass and the laughter that sounded like breaking glass. I did not sleep. I listened to the house. I listened to footsteps. I listened to water running. I listened to my peace eroding, grain by grain. I must have dozed off eventually, because I woke to silence. The light coming through the blinds was gray and heavy. It was early, 6 a.m. I got up and walked out into the living room. The devastation was quiet, but it was total. Sand was everywhere. It was tracked across the hardwood and gritty. Pale streaks. It was on the sofa cushions. It was on the rug. The kitchen was a graveyard of aluminum cans and plastic cups. The smell of stale beer and lime was thick in the air. But the thing that made me stop breathing was the bench. I had a beautiful, handcrafted wooden bench in the entryway. It was reclaimed teak, expensive and delicate. Someone had thrown a pile of soaking wet beach towels directly onto the wood. A dark stain had already seeped into the grain. A watermark that would never fully come out. I walked over and lifted the heavy, damp towels. The wood beneath was white and sodden. Morning. I jumped. A guy, Mike, was coming out of the bathroom, scratching his stomach. I pointed at the bench. Who put these here? I asked. He looked at the towels. Oh, yeah. We went for a night swim. Didn't want to get the floor wet. You put wet towels on untreated wood. I said. He shrugged, grabbing a bottle of water from the counter. Beach house problems, right? Things get messy. He walked past me, unconcerned, and went out to the deck. I stood there, staring at the stain. Beach house problems, as if the damage was an inevitable weather pattern. Not a choice they had made. I started to clean. I did not want to, but the compulsion was stronger than the anger. I swept the sand. I gathered the cans. I wiped the sticky counters. I did it silently, furiously, defaulting to the invisible labor I had performed my entire life. If I cleaned it, it wasn't real. If I fixed it, the conflict didn't happen. By the time the rest of the house began to stir, the kitchen was mostly restored. Kelsey emerged around 9, wearing a silk robe and holding a cup of coffee she must have made while I was scrubbing the floor. She looked around the living room. It feels stiff in here, she said. What? I asked. I was on my knees, wiping a smudge off the baseboard. The flow, she said. It is all wrong for the shoot. She walked over to the armchair and shoved it. The legs screeched against the floor. Kelsey, don't, I said, standing up. We need open space, she said. Help me move the sofa. I am not moving the sofa, I said. She sighed. Fine, I will get Brent to do it. She walked over to the fireplace mantel. I had placed a single framed photo there. It was a picture of me on the day I closed on the house, holding the keys, looking tired but genuinely happy. It was the only personal item I had displayed. Kelsey picked it up. This has to go, she said. Excuse me? I said. It is clutter, she said. It distracts from the lines of the fireplace. We want the background to look neutral, curated. She opened the drawer of the console table and dropped the photo inside, shutting the drawer with a click. I watched her. My hands were fists at my sides. Part of me wanted to scream. I wanted to walk over, open the drawer, take the photo out, and smash it over her head. I wanted to tell her to get out. But another part of me, the part that had been trained to keep the peace, the part that was terrified of being called crazy or dramatic, stayed silent. I imagined the scene if I yelled. She would cry. She would tell everyone I was having a breakdown. The group would look at me with pity and annoyance, so I said nothing. I let her hide my face in my own house. I am going to shower, I said, my voice flat. You do that, she said, distractedly, already moving a vase to a different table. You look tired. I went into the bathroom. I turned the water on hot, letting the room fill with steam. I sat on the toilet lid, my head in my hands. I needed evidence. The lawyer's voice in my head, not a real lawyer, just the common sense I usually ignored, told me I needed to stop cleaning and start documenting. I finished my shower and dressed. I walked back out to the kitchen. The counter was cluttered again, makeup bags, sunglasses, phones, and a stack of papers. I walked over. It was a printed document, sitting near Kelsey's laptop. I glanced at it. It was a checklist. Run of show. Astor Cove activation. I frowned. Activation? That was marketing speak. I read down the list. 10 a.m. Morning routine reels. Kitchen. 12 p.m. Group lunch. Brand mention. Mirth Coast Wellness. 2 p.m. Product placement shots. Deck/dunes. And then, at the bottom, a line highlighted in yellow. Location release form needed? Next to it, written in red pen in Kelsey's handwriting, Ask Kelsey. Owner release? No, she doesn't need to sign. We will just use the implied consent clause if she's in the background. I stared at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. She doesn't need to sign. I wasn't the owner. I wasn't even a participant. I was a prop, a legal loophole they were planning to exploit. I looked up. Kelsey was across the room, directing Javi to move the sofa. She was laughing, her head thrown back, the mistress of the manor. She had not just invited friends. She had sold my house as a location for a commercial shoot, and she had done it by gambling on the fact that I was too weak to stop her. I reached out and took the paper. I folded it carefully, my movements slow and precise. I put it in my pocket. It was the first time all weekend I had taken something for myself. Nora, Kelsey called out, spotting me. Come here. We need you to sit in the chair for a light test. Just for a second. I looked at her. I felt the paper burning against my hip. Coming, I said. I walked toward her, but I wasn't walking into her scene anymore. I was walking into my own. The morning sun did not bring clarity. It brought a stark, high-definition view of the violation. I woke up with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. A rhythmic reminder of the bass that had shaken the floorboards until 2 a.m. I lay in bed for a moment, listening. The house was quiet, but it was a heavy, populated silence. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of the ocean, and the soft, rhythmic snoring coming from the living room. I sat up. Today had to be different. I could not let the momentum of the previous day carry us into a full-scale disaster. I needed to draw a line. Even if my hands were shaking when I did it, I walked out into the kitchen. The mess from the night before had been partially addressed. Likely by the same guest who had made the beach house problems comment, but it was a superficial effort. Cans were crushed but left on the counter. The sand was swept into a pile but not into a dustpan. Kelsey was already up. She was sitting on the deck, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, holding a steaming mug and looking out at the ocean with a serene, practiced expression. She looked like the picture of coastal relaxation. If you did not know the chaos she had orchestrated to get there, you would think she belonged on the cover of a lifestyle magazine. I slid the glass door open. The salt air hit me, cool and bracing. "Morning," she said without turning around. Her voice was raspy from the cocktails. "The light is incredible right now. You really bought a gem." "Nora," I did not want her compliments. I wanted my house back. "Kelsey," I said, stepping onto the wood, "we need to talk." She turned then, smiling that wide, dazzling smile that usually disarmed everyone in a 5-mile radius. "Can it wait until I have had coffee?" she asked. "My brain is not online yet." "No," I said, "it cannot wait." I leaned against the railing, crossing my arms to keep them from trembling. "I am setting some hard rules for the rest of the weekend," I said, "and I need you to actually hear me this time, not just nod and ignore me." She sighed, a small puff of air that suggested I was being incredibly tedious. "Okay, Mom," she said, "let us hear the rules." "Number 1, I said, no more guests. The 12 people here are already over the limit, but no one else comes over. No locals, no friends of friends, just the people who are currently sleeping in the house." "Reasonable," she said, taking a sip of coffee. "Number 2, I said, no filming inside the house. I do not want my bedroom or my bathroom or my personal space on the internet. If you want to take pictures of the ocean, fine. But the house is off limits." Kelsey frowned slightly. "That is a little restrictive. Nora, the aesthetic inside is, the house is off limits," I repeated, cutting her off. "Fine," she said, waving a hand. "Outside only." Number 3, I said, quiet hours are enforced. 10 o'clock at night, no music, no shouting, no parties on the deck. The security guard gave us a warning last night. The next one is a fine, and you are paying it." She laughed. A short, sharp sound. "I am not going to make you pay a fine. Nora, relax. We will keep it down." She looked up at me, her eyes bright and unbothered. "Is that it?" she asked. "Can I enjoy my coffee now?" I looked at her face. It was the face of someone who was agreeing to terms she had absolutely no intention of honoring. She was placating me. She was using the tone one uses with a toddler who is demanding a pony. You say maybe later just to end the conversation. "Of course, babe," she said, flashing that smile again. "We are going to be angels. I promise." I went back inside, feeling hollow. I had said the words, but they felt weightless. 2 hours later, a large white box truck rumbled down the quiet cul-de-sac of Seaglass Lane. I was in the kitchen, trying to make toast amidst the clutter of the guests' dietary supplements and protein powders, when I heard the heavy screech of air brakes. I looked out the front window. The truck was double parked in front of my driveway, blocking half the road. The side of the truck read Coastal Event Rentals. My stomach dropped. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked out the front door. 2 men in blue jumpsuits were already lowering the lift gate. On the metal platform sat a massive black speaker system, the kind used for outdoor weddings or concerts, and 2 stacks of white folding chairs. "Excuse me," I called out, jogging down the driveway. "Excuse me?" One of the men looked up, holding a clipboard. "Help you?" he asked. "I think you have the wrong address." I said, "I did not order any of this." He looked down at his clipboard, then back at the house number, then at me. 42 Seaglass Lane? He asked. "Yes," I said, "but I did not order speakers or chairs." He flipped a page. "Order is for Nora Turner," he said. I froze. "Let me see that." I said. He handed me the clipboard. There, in black and white, was the invoice. Customer, Nora Turner. Billing address, 42 Seaglass Lane. The items listed were a Pro Audio sound package and 20 white resin chairs. The order had been placed at 2 a.m. My eyes scanned the payment method. Visa ending in 4129. That was my card. That was my primary checking card. I felt a wave of dizziness. I had been asleep at 2 a.m. My purse had been in the bedroom with me, but my iPad had been charging in the kitchen. I handed the clipboard back to the man. "I did not place this order," I said, my voice shaking. "This is a mistake. Take it back." "Lady, the delivery fee is non-refundable," he said, looking annoyed. "It is already paid for. If we take it back, you still pay the drop-off. I do not care." I said, "Take it back." Do not unload it. He shrugged, signaled to his partner, and they began to lift the gate back up. I turned around and marched back into the house. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. This was not just a boundary violation, this was fraud. I found Kelsey in the living room. She was directing two of her friends, instructing them on how to arrange throw pillows on the sofa I had explicitly asked them not to move. "Kelsey," I said. She turned, sensing the change in my tone. "What is up?" she asked. "Did you order a sound system and chairs from Coastal Event Rentals?" I asked. She blinked, her face going blank for a split second before reassembling into an expression of innocent confusion. "Oh, the surprise," she said. "It is here already?" That was fast. "It is not a surprise," I said. "It is theft." The room went quiet. The two friends stopped fluffing pillows. "The invoice has my name on it." "Kelsey," I said, my voice rising. "It was paid for with my credit card. You used my autofill information on the iPad, didn't you?" She laughed, an awkward, high-pitched sound. "Nora, do not be dramatic," she said. "I did not steal anything. I used the house card. I thought we were sharing expenses for the weekend. I was going to Venmo you the difference." "There is no house card," I shouted. "That is my personal bank account, and I did not agree to share expenses for a party I did not want." She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice, her eyes darting to her friends. "Don't accuse me in front of people," she hissed. "You are embarrassing yourself." "I am embarrassing myself?" I asked. "You committed identity fraud to rent speakers for a party I told you not to have." "I was doing it for you," she insisted, flipping the script with breathtaking speed. "We needed seating for the dinner tonight. I wanted it to be nice. I wanted you to have a good time without worrying about logistics. I used the saved card because I didn't want to wake you up to ask for yours. I was trying to be helpful. Helpful is asking." I said, "This is stealing. You always do this," she said, shaking her head as if she were the long-suffering victim of a hysterical relative. "You always make me the villain when you are anxious. You spin everything into some huge drama because you cannot handle social situations." I felt myself shrinking. It was the old dynamic, the one that had defined our childhood. Kelsey acted, and when I reacted, my reaction became the problem. She was the protagonist. I was the obstacle. I sent the truck away. I said, my voice trembling again, "You what?" she asked, her eyes widening. I sent it back. No speakers, no chairs. Kelsey looked at me with genuine disbelief. "Nora, people are coming tonight," she said. "Where are they going to sit?" "People?" I asked. "What people?" "I told you no more guests, just a few locals," she said dismissively. "Potential contacts. It is a networking thing. You are sabotaging the whole vibe." "I am sabotaging the vibe?" I asked. "I am trying to keep from getting fined by the association." She turned her back on me. "I cannot deal with you when you are like this," she said to the room at large. "It is impossible." She walked out onto the deck, leaving me standing in the living room with her friends staring at me. They looked uncomfortable, but they also looked like they agreed with her. To them, I was the buzzkill. I was the erratic sister who ruined the surprise. I retreated to my bedroom again. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my email on my phone. There it was, a confirmation email from Coastal Event Rentals at 2:14 a.m. I scrolled through my inbox. There were other emails I hadn't opened. A confirmation for a bulk order of artisanal mixers. A confirmation for a local florist for 3 large arrangements, all of them ordered in the middle of the night. All of them using my name. All of them using my address. My hands shook so hard, I almost dropped the phone. She was not just using my house. She was wearing my life like a costume. She was spending my money and using my identity to fund a production I had explicitly forbidden. I changed the password on my iPad. I changed the password on my email. It felt like locking the barn door after the horses had already been stolen and sold to a glue factory. I needed to leave the house. I needed to breathe air that didn't smell of Kelsey's perfume and deception. I grabbed my keys and walked out the front door, avoiding the living room where the group was now loudly discussing where to find backup chairs. I walked down the driveway to the mailbox. I didn't have mail yet, but I needed a destination. Nora. I looked up. Maris Holloway was standing in her garden 2 houses down. Wearing a wide-brimmed hat and gardening gloves, she was pruning a hydrangea bush with surgical precision. "Hi, Maris," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She set down her shears and walked over to the low fence that separated our properties. She looked at me, her eyes kind but penetrating. I saw the rental truck turn around. She said, "Yeah," I said. "There was a mix-up." She nodded slowly. "The association drove by 3 times last night." "Nora," she said quietly. I felt the blood drain from my face. "I know." I said, "We got a warning. They are logging cars," she said. "And they are doing head counts. I saw Rowan Pike, he is the compliance officer, writing down license plates this morning." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping. "I am not telling you this to be nosy, dear. I am telling you because I have seen this happen before. A young owner buys a place. Family comes down. Boundaries get blurry. Next thing you know, there is a lien on the property for unpaid fines and a cease and desist order for operating an unlicensed hotel." She looked at the black SUVs parked in my driveway. "You seem like a nice person. Nora, you seem like you want to be here. Do not let them push you out before you have even settled in." Her kindness was worse than her judgment would have been. If she had yelled at me, I could have been defensive, but she was pitying me. She saw me not as a villain, but as a victim who was losing control of her own life. My throat tightened. I felt the sting of tears behind my eyes. "Thank you, Maris," I whispered. "I am trying." She patted the fence post. "Try harder," she said gently. I walked back toward the house, her words echoing in my head. "Try harder." As I approached the porch, I heard voices coming from the side yard. It was 2 of the guests, Chloe and the guy who had been vaping. Javi. They were smoking cigarettes, hiding behind the outdoor shower. I stopped, hidden by the corner of the house. "Totally weird vibe," Javi was saying. "Why is the sister so intense?" "I do not know," Chloe replied. "Kelsey said she was supportive, but she acts like she didn't know about the collab weekend." "The collab weekend?" I held my breath. "I mean, if we are doing a soft launch for Mirth Coast Wellness, we need the energy to be right." Chloe continued. "The investors are going to see this content. If the background energy is hostile, it shows on camera." Javi exhaled a cloud of smoke. "Kelsey said the house was a lock. She said the sister was practically a silent partner." I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mirth Coast Wellness. I had never heard that name before. I slipped into the house through the back door and went straight to the bathroom. Locking the door behind me, I sat on the closed toilet lid and pulled out my phone. I typed Mirth Coast Wellness into the search bar. The website loaded. It was a glossy, high-design page in shades of sage green, beige, and terracotta. The font was elegant and minimalist. Mirth Coast Wellness. Reclaim your spirit. Curated retreats for the modern soul. I scrolled down. There were photos of women in yoga poses on beaches, photos of smoothie bowls, photos of sunsets. It looked like 1,000 other wellness brands. But then I clicked on the About section. Founded by Kelsey Turner, my sister. I read the copy. Kelsey Turner is a visionary in the experiential wellness space, bringing together luxury locations and holistic healing. I searched for reviews. The first page of Google was clean, mostly press releases, but then I went to the second page. I found a forum thread on a site discussing wellness scams. Has anyone dealt with Mirth Coast? They owe my catering company $4,000 from a retreat in Joshua Tree last year. Stay away. They canceled a booking 3 days before the date and never refunded the deposit. Total smoke and mirrors. The founder uses rented Airbnbs and claims she owns them to get investors on board. My stomach churned. It wasn't just a party. It wasn't just a content trip. It was a business operation for a failing, fraudulent company. And then I saw it, on the main page of the website, under a banner that said, Upcoming Locations. There was a photo. It was a close-up of a deck railing, with dunes and the ocean in the background. It was blurred slightly for artistic effect, but the grain of the wood, the specific shape of the dune grass, it was my deck. The caption read, "The Astor Cove Sanctuary. Exclusive member access opening soon." She was marketing my house. She was selling memberships to a location she did not own, for a business that didn't pay its bills. I stood up. The bathroom felt too small. The house felt too small. I needed to confront her. Not about the noise, not about the towels, about the lie. I found her in the kitchen. She was mixing a protein shake, the blender roaring. She didn't hear me come in. I waited until she turned the blender off. "Kelsey," I said. She jumped, spilling a little green liquid on the counter. "God, Nora, you scared me. Stop sneaking around." I held up my phone. The screen displayed the Mirth Coast Wellness homepage. "What is this?" I asked. She looked at the phone, then at me. Her face didn't crumble. It hardened. The bubbly sister mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "It is my business," she said. "You know that. I know you have a business," I said. "I did not know my house was the headquarters." She sighed, wiping the counter with a sponge. "It is not the headquarters. Nora, it is a venue. We are doing a soft launch. I told you that. You told me it was a getaway with friends." I said, "You didn't tell me you were selling memberships to my home. It is just marketing," she snapped. "You do not understand how this works. You have to project success to get funding. I need a flagship location to show the investors. Once the capital comes in, we can buy a place for real. I am just using this as a placeholder." "A placeholder?" I asked. "Kelsey, you are selling dates. You are taking money for a retreat at a house you do not own. I am leveraging assets," she shouted, slamming the sponge into the sink. "That is what smart people do. You have this asset sitting here, doing nothing. While you mope around feeling sorry for yourself, I am trying to build something. I am trying to create generational wealth for us." "For us?" I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "You put my name on an invoice for speakers because you didn't want to pay for them. This isn't for us. This is for you." "You are so short-sighted," she said, shaking her head. "If this weekend goes well, Mirth Coast takes off, and then I can pay you back 10 times over. I can pay the mortgage on this place." "I do not want you to pay the mortgage," I screamed. "I want you to leave." She looked at me with genuine pity. "I cannot leave. Nora, the investors are coming to the dinner tonight." "What?" I whispered. "The people coming tonight," she said calmly. "The locals I mentioned? 2 of them are angel investors I met in the city. They think I have secured a permanent coastal facility. If I cancel now, I lose everything. So you are going to pull it together, put on a nice dress, and pretend you are supportive, or you are going to destroy your sister's career." She picked up her protein shake and walked past me. "Your choice," she said. I stood in the kitchen, trembling. I was trapped. If I kicked them out, I was the monster who ruined her life. If I stayed, I was an accomplice to fraud. I waited until nightfall. The dinner was happening on the deck. Despite my rules, they had moved the table outside anyway. I could hear the clinking of glasses and the murmur of persuasive voices. Kelsey was out there, pitching her heart out, selling a dream built on my property deed. I stayed inside, hiding in the shadows of the kitchen. Kelsey's laptop was sitting on the island. It was open. I walked over to it. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it would only hurt, but I had to know the extent of it. The screen was dim, but I touched the trackpad and it flared to life. It was open to a document editor, a draft listing for a vacation rental site. Title: Astor Cove, Oceanfront Escape, Limited Dates. Description: Experience the healing power of the Atlantic in this exclusive, private sanctuary, hosted by Mirth Coast Wellness. I scrolled down to the host information. Host name: Nora T. Bio: Nora is a partner at Mirth Coast Wellness and is dedicated to sharing her home with those seeking renewal. She had not only stolen the house, she had stolen my voice. She was drafting a persona for me, a compliant, silent partner who existed only to serve her brand. My chest went tight. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She was not visiting. She was occupying, and she had no intention of leaving on Sunday. I looked out the window at the deck. Kelsey was standing at the head of the table, holding a wine glass, gesturing at the ocean, at the house, at the life I had built. The investors were nodding, captivated. She was selling it. She was selling me. And I realized then that Maris was right. This wasn't a family squabble. This was a hostile takeover. And I was the only one who could stop it. The morning light did not bring relief. It brought a headache that sat behind my eyes like a lead weight, and a terrifying clarity that I could no longer ignore. I sat in my car, parked 3 streets away from my own house, clutching my phone. The air inside the vehicle was stale, but it was the only place I could speak without being overheard by the 12 people currently occupying my living room. I had found the number for Harbor and Slate Legal Group online. It was a local firm, one that specialized in property disputes and family law. I did not know if they were good, but I knew they were far enough away from the city that Kelsey would not know them. A woman picked up on the 3rd ring. Harbor and Slate. This is Dana. My voice felt tight in my throat. Hi, Dana. My name is Nora Turner. I need a consultation. Urgently. The attorney, Dana Rusk, had a voice like sandpaper, rough, dry, and stripping away any unnecessary pleasantries. She listened as I spilled the story. I told her about the house purchase. I told her about the LLC. I told her about the uninvited guests, the noise, the business launch, and the draft listing I had found on the laptop. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Ms. Turner, Dana said finally, you do not have a house guest problem. You have a squatter problem. And because she is family, you have a credibility problem. I gripped the steering wheel. What do I do? Do I call the police? You could, she said, but if she has mail delivered there, or if she has keys, or if you gave her permission to enter initially, which you did, the police will likely call it a civil matter. They will tell you to take it to court, and eviction in this state can take months. Months, I repeated. The word made my stomach turn. You need to document everything, Dana said, and I mean everything. Screenshots of texts, photos of the damage, invoices for the rentals, a log of every person who enters and exits, record the noise levels. You need to build a wall of evidence so high she cannot climb over it. Family messes get expensive when the paper trail belongs to the wrong person. Right now, she is building a paper trail that says she lives there and runs a business there. You need to build one that proves she is a trespasser. I understand, I said. Do not engage in screaming matches, Dana added. Screamers look unstable to a judge. Be the reasonable one. Be the boring one. Let her be the chaos. And check your credit report. Today, I hung up, feeling a cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Check my credit report. I drove back to the house, the dread sitting heavy in my gut. When I pulled into the driveway, the black SUVs were still there. Blocking the garage, I had to park on the gravel strip near the road. I walked up the path, and my eyes snagged on something bright orange stuck to my front door. It was a notice. Astor Dunes Community Association. Notice of violation. I walked up to it, my legs feeling heavy. It was taped firmly to the wood at eye level. Occupancy violation. Noise complaint. First warning. The date was yesterday. The time was 11:30 at night. I reached out to rip it down. Shame flooding my face. This was my house. I was the one who had saved for 5 years. I was the one who had read the bylaws. And now, less than 48 hours into ownership, I was being branded a nuisance. Before I could touch the paper, the door swung open. Kelsey stood there, wearing a silk kimono and holding a mimosa. She saw me looking at the notice and laughed. "Oh, that," she said, waving her glass at it. "Isn't it cute? They are so dramatic here. It is like living in a dormitory." "Cute?" I asked. My voice was low. "Kelsey, this is a legal notice. It is a piece of paper." "Nora," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I already threw away the one they put on the windshield. It is fine. "Come inside. We are making brunch." She turned and walked back into the dark, cool hallway. I threw away the one they put on the windshield. She was erasing the evidence. She was intercepting the warnings so I would not see them, or so she could pretend they did not exist. I peeled the orange sticker off the door. Careful not to tear it, I folded it and put it in my pocket. Evidence. Dana Rusk had said to document everything. This was Exhibit A. I walked inside. The house smelled of bacon and stale beer. There were people everywhere, sitting on the counters, lounging on the floor. The music was already playing, a lo-fi beat that rattled the coffee cups on the table. I went straight to the kitchen island, where my mail pile usually sat. It was gone. I looked around. I saw a stack of envelopes on the sideboard, under a set of car keys. I walked over and flipped through them. A flyer for a pizza place, a utility bill addressed to Shoreline Holding Company, and then a large, thick envelope addressed to Kelsey Turner. The return address was a credit card company. I stared at it. The postmark was from 3 days ago. I thought back, 4 months ago. Kelsey had texted me. "Hey, I am updating my address book for my birthday invites. What is the new address for the beach place? I want to send you a save the date." I had given it to her. I had thought she was being thoughtful. I had thought she wanted to send me a card. She had used it to change her billing address. She had established residency before she had even set foot in the house. I felt a wave of nausea. This was not impulsive. This was not a fun weekend that got out of hand. This was premeditated. She had been planning this since the moment I signed the offer letter. I slipped the envelope into my bag. "I need to go to the store," I announced to the room. No one looked up. I went to the local hardware store and bought a small, discreet indoor security camera. It was a white cube, no bigger than a golf ball. I also bought a pack of small stickers that read, "Video surveillance in progress." Dana had been clear. I could not record in private areas like bedrooms or bathrooms, but the entryway, the living room, those were common areas. As long as I posted notice, I was within my rights. I returned to the house. The group was out on the deck, cheering as someone attempted to open a champagne bottle with a saber. I used the noise as cover. I stuck the camera on top of the bookshelf in the entryway, nestled between 2 decorative vases. It had a clear view of the front door and the main hallway. I plugged it into the outlet behind the shelf. I stuck the tiny surveillance sticker on the window near the door, low enough to be missed at a glance but visible enough to be legal. I synced it to my phone. The feed popped up. A wide-angle view of my own home, looking distorted and strange. I hated it. I hated spying on my own family. I hated that I had to treat my sister like a liability. I wanted to trust people. I wanted to be the kind of person who could have an open-door policy. But looking at the live feed, watching strangers track sand onto my floor, I realized that being that person was what had gotten me here. Naivety was not a virtue. It was a vulnerability, and Kelsey had weaponized it. I walked out to the deck. Kelsey was holding court at the head of the table. She saw me and beckoned me over. "Nora, come sit," she shouted. "We are talking about relationships." I did not want to sit. I wanted to scream, but I remembered Dana's advice. Be the boring one. I sat down on the edge of a bench. "We were just saying," Kelsey continued, gesturing with her glass, "that the reason you are still single is because you are too rigid. You know? You cannot share space." The table went quiet. A few people looked down at their plates. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Like, look at this weekend," she said. "You have been vibrating with anxiety since we got here. You are obsessing over coasters and towels. Men do not like that. Nora, they want someone who can flow. You treat every interaction like a transaction." She laughed, looking around the table for validation. "Tell her. Guys, am I right?" No one spoke, but I saw the way they looked at me. They saw a woman who was uptight, a woman who was weird about money, a woman who was ruining the vibe. Kelsey was painting a portrait of me as a neurotic, joyless spinster, and she was using it to justify her own behavior. If I was crazy, then her boundary violations were actually acts of liberation. She wasn't stealing my house. She was helping me loosen up. It is true, she continued, not waiting for an answer. You are weird about money, too. Like, panicking about the speakers? It is an investment. Nora, you have to spend money to make memories, but you just see the cost. You do not see the value. She took a sip of her drink, her eyes locked on mine. That is why you are alone, babe. You value safety over connection. The words landed like slaps. I felt my face burning. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to tell them I was alone because my last boyfriend had gaslit me for 2 years, just like she was doing now. I wanted to tell them I cared about money because I had earned every cent that paid for the roof over their heads. But I said nothing. I just nodded. Slowly. Maybe you are right, I said. Kelsey looked disappointed. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to cry or yell so she could comfort me and reclaim her role as the benevolent big sister. I stood up. I'm going to check my email, I said. I walked back inside, leaving the silence behind me. I checked the camera feed on my phone. It had recorded the whole conversation through the open door. Good. Then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something made me answer. Hello? Hi. Is this Nora Turner? Yes. This is Greg from Benton Shore Mortgage Services. I am returning the call regarding the refinance inquiry on the property at 42 Seaglass Lane. I stopped walking. I was standing in the middle of the hallway, directly under the camera I had just installed. I did not inquire about a refinance. I said, there was a pause, the shuffling of papers. Okay, Greg said. I have a note here from a call placed this morning at 9 o'clock. The caller requested information on cash-out options for the equity. They wanted to know how quickly we could close. Cash-out options. My knees felt weak. Who placed the call? I asked. The log says, let me see. The caller identified herself as an authorized contact on the account. Kelsey Turner. The world tilted on its axis. She is not an authorized contact, I said, my voice shaking. She has no authority on this account. This property is owned by Shoreline Holding Company. I am the sole member. Oh, Greg said. His tone shifted from professional to alarmed. Okay, I see. Ms. Turner, I am going to flag this account immediately. We will require a voice verification password for any future inquiries. Do you want me to put a freeze on any applications? Yes, I said. Freeze everything. No one touches the equity. No one. I hung up. I stood there for a full minute, breathing hard. This was not marketing. This was not a soft launch. This was an attempt to liquidate my life. She was trying to pull cash out of my house. I walked out to the deck. I did not care about being boring anymore. Kelsey, I said. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. What now? She asked. I just got off the phone with Benton Shore Mortgage. I said. The color drained from her face. It was instantaneous. For a split second, I saw the panic behind her eyes, the terrified realization that she had been caught. But then, just as quickly, the mask slammed back into place. Oh, right, she said, forcing a laugh. I was going to tell you about that. You called them? I asked. You tried to refinance my house? I was just exploring options, she said, waving her hand as if we were discussing dinner plans. I know you are tight on cash after the down payment. I thought if we could pull some equity out, we could fund the Mirth Coast launch properly, invest in the business. It would help you, too. You tried to take a loan out on my home without asking me? I said. I was doing the legwork, she said, her voice rising to that defensive pitch I knew so well. You do not know how to leverage assets. Nora, you have this dead capital sitting here. I was just getting information. I wasn't going to sign anything without you. God, why do you always assume the worst? Because you lied to the bank. I said. You told them you were authorized. I am your sister, she shouted. That implies authorization. We are a team. We are not a team. I said. I am the owner. You are a guest, and you are done exploring my assets. I turned and walked away before she could spin it further. I heard her muttering to her friends as I left. She is hysterical. She does not understand business. I walked out the front door and kept walking. I crossed the lawn, stepping over the low fence to the neighboring property. Maris was sitting on her porch, reading a book. She looked up as I approached. "Nora," she said, "you look pale." I sat down on the step of her porch. I put my head in my hands. She tried to refinance the house. I whispered. Maris closed her book. She did not look surprised. "I am on the association committee," Maris said quietly. "I did not want to overstep before, but you need to know what is happening." I looked up at her. "We had an emergency meeting this morning," she said, "because of the noise last night and the commercial delivery truck this morning. There is talk of moving straight to a hearing. If they prove you are running a business, and with the amount of people and equipment over there, it looks like you are, they can revoke your use privileges. They can fine you $500 a day." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "If she keeps this up, Nora, you will lose the house, not to the bank, to the legal fees and the liens. She is turning your asset into a liability." I felt a cold resolve settle over me. It was heavier than the fear. "I know," I said. Maris reached out and squeezed my hand. "You need to get her out," she said. "I cannot physically throw her out." I said, "There are 12 of them, and she has established residency. She has mail. Then you need to get smart." Maris said, "You need to stop being her sister and start being her landlord. You need to trap her." I nodded. "I have a plan." I said, "Good," Maris said. "Because the association officer, Rowan Pike, he is coming back tonight, and he is not coming to give a warning." I walked back to my house. I felt different. The trembling in my hands had stopped. I went into the kitchen. Kelsey was there, angrily typing on her laptop. She did not look up. I walked past her to the fridge. I took out a bottle of water. "I am sorry," she said, without looking at me. I stopped. "I am sorry I didn't tell you about the call," she said. "I was trying to surprise you with a business plan. I wanted to present the funding and the remodel all at once. I should have looped you in. It was a non-apology. It was a justification wrapped in a sorry." "It is okay," I said. She looked up. Surprised. "It is?" "Yeah," I said. I overreacted. "You are right. I do not know much about leveraging assets." She relaxed visibly. Her shoulders dropped. She smiled. That predatory, victorious smile. "Exactly," she said. "Stick with me. Nora, we are going to build an empire." I smiled back. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. "I am sure we will," I said. I walked to my room. I did not lock the door. I sat on my bed and pulled out my notebook. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the time of the mortgage call. I wrote down the exact words she had used. Dead capital, leveraging assets, implicit authorization. I checked the camera feed. It was recording. I checked the orange notice in my pocket. I checked the mail in my bag. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to let her dig her hole until it was so deep she couldn't climb out. And then, when she was at the bottom, thinking she had won, I was going to bury her with the paperwork. Tonight, Rowan Pike was coming. And for the first time since I bought the house, I was looking forward to a knock on the door. The transition from afternoon to evening was not marked by the setting sun. But by the arrival of the lighting crew, I stood in the kitchen, watching my living room dissolve. The furniture I had carefully selected, what little of it there was, had been pushed against the walls. In its place, a long, rustic farmhouse table had appeared. I did not own a farmhouse table. It had been rented, presumably on my credit card again. Though I had locked the iPad away, Kelsey was moving through the space like a hurricane in a silk dress. She was directing 2 men I had never seen before. One was setting up a portable bar in the corner, polishing glasses that did not belong to me. The other was adjusting a massive softbox light that bathed the room in an artificial golden glow. "Final night dinner," Kelsey announced, clapping her hands. "We are going for an intimate, exclusive supper club vibe." I counted the heads. The original 12 were there. dressed in shades of beige and cream, looking like cult members attending a baptism. But there were others. I saw a man with a camera rig that looked professional. I saw a woman with a clipboard who was adjusting the flowers. I saw 3 people standing near the door who looked like they were waiting to be seated at a restaurant. "Who are they?" I asked, pointing to the trio. "Oh, those are just some local connections," Kelsey said, not looking at me. "The guy on the left owns the surf shop. The woman is a potential content partner for the yoga retreat. And the other guy is a bartender I found on an app. We needed professional service for the investors." "Investors," I repeated. 2 men had just walked in through the open sliding doors from the deck. They were older, tanned, wearing linen jackets and loafers without socks. They looked wealthy, but in a specific, predatory way, the kind of wealth that is always looking for the next thing to consume. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. I felt a sick, heavy thud in my stomach. This was not a dinner. This was a pitch meeting, and my home was the slide deck. I watched as Kelsey greeted them. She touched their arms, threw her head back and laughed, guiding them toward the rented table. She was selling. I could see the desperate energy radiating off her, the way her eyes darted around the room to make sure everything was perfect. I drifted toward the kitchen, trying to stay invisible. I needed to hear what they were saying. One of the guests, a girl named Sarah, who had spent the morning complaining about the lack of oat milk, was talking to one of the linen suit men. "It is such a great location," Sarah was saying, "and having a permanent base here changes everything." The man nodded, swirling his wine. "That is the key. Scalability. If Kelsey can guarantee the asset is secured for the season, we are interested in the seed round, but we need to know the property is locked down. We do not want to fund a pop-up. We want a flagship." Sarah smiled. "Oh, it is locked down. Kelsey said the family transfer is basically a formality." I froze. The countertop felt cold under my palms. The family transfer. She was not just pretending to own it. She was telling people I was transferring it to her. She was selling a future where I did not exist, or where I had been bullied into signing over the deed. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. I needed air. I walked out the front door, avoiding the main room, slipping out before anyone could ask me to fetch ice or move out of the frame. The mailbox at the end of the driveway was my only destination. I had checked it earlier, but the mail truck came late on Saturdays. I opened the metal box. There was a single envelope inside. It was heavy, thick, expensive paper. It was addressed to Kelsey Turner. At 42 Seaglass Lane, I looked at the return address. Astor Cove Resident Access Program. I ripped it open right there in the driveway. Inside was a laminated card and a parking decal. Resident Beach Access, Zone A. I stared at it. To get this pass, you had to prove residency. You needed a deed, a lease of at least 12 months, or a utility bill in your name. I had not given her any of those things. She must have forged a lease, or maybe she had managed to switch a utility bill into her name during one of those moments she had been helping around the house. She was building a paper trail, a documented history of living here. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out and dialed the one number I had been avoiding. "Hi, Mom," I said when she answered. "Nora?" Elaine Turner's voice was bright, distracted. "I can barely hear you. Are you at the party?" Kelsey sent me a picture of the table setup. "It looks gorgeous." "Mom," I said, cutting through her chatter. "Kelsey is trying to steal my house." There was a pause, a silence that stretched too long, filled with a static that felt like avoidance. "Oh, Nora, don't be dramatic," she said finally. Her tone had shifted. It was the tone she used when I was a teenager and complained about Kelsey borrowing my clothes without asking. "She is not being dramatic." "Mom," I said, "she has mail coming here. She told investors she is securing the property permanently. She forged documents to get a resident beach pass." "Nora, listen to me," my mother said. Her voice dropped, becoming firm and hushed. "Your sister is under a lot of pressure right now. This business, it is her last shot at something big. She just needs a win." So I am the sacrifice? I asked. My house is the win she gets to steal? It is just a weekend. Nora, my mother said, just let her have this weekend. Why do you always have to make everything a conflict? She is trying to build a future. You have a steady job. You have the house. Can't you just share? I heard it then. The complicity. It wasn't just that my mother didn't want to hear it. She knew. She knew Kelsey was desperate. She knew Kelsey was lying. And she had decided that my stability was a resource Kelsey was entitled to harvest. Did you help her? I asked. The question came out as a whisper. Did you help her fake the documents for the beach pass? You are a notary, Mom. The silence on the line was deafening. It was a physical weight. I have to go. Nora, my mother said sharply, be a good sister. Do not ruin this for her. The line went dead. I stood in the driveway, holding the phone and the resident pass. The betrayal was so complete it left me breathless. I was not fighting my sister. I was fighting my family. I dialed Dana Rusk. It was Saturday evening, but she had given me her cell number after our first call. She picked up on the second ring. This is Dana. She has a resident beach pass, I said, and my mother just hung up on me when I asked if she notarized the application. Dana let out a low whistle. Okay, she said. The timeline just accelerated. What does it mean? I asked. It means she is establishing adverse possession, or at least a colorable claim of tenancy. Dana said, if she has mail, a key, access, and a government-issued pass linked to the address, she is not a guest anymore. In the eyes of the law, she is a tenant. If you try to lock her out on Monday, she can call the police and claim illegal eviction. But she doesn't pay rent. I said, doesn't matter. Dana said, tenancy is about possession and consent. You let her in. You let her stay. Now she has documentation. She is digging in like a tick. She is not stealing the house in the sense that she will get the deed tomorrow. She is stealing your time and your stability. She can tie this property up in housing court for 6 months while she runs her business out of your living room. Do you want a roommate for the next year who hates you and doesn't pay rent? No. I said, then you need to sever the consent, Dana said. Immediately. In writing. You need to be the landlord she thinks you are too afraid to be. I hung up. I walked back into the house, but I did not go to the kitchen. I went to the small office nook in the hallway where I had set up my laptop. I could hear the party in full swing, laughter, the clink of silverware, Kelsey's voice rising above the din, making a toast about new beginnings and sacred spaces. I opened my laptop. I typed furiously. I kept it cold. I kept it factual. Notice to vacate and cease desist. To Kelsey Turner. From Nora Turner, owner, Shoreline Holding Company. Date, Saturday, January 31st, 1. Immediate revocation of guest privileges, effective immediately. All permission for you and your associated guests to occupy the premises at 42 Seaglass Lane is revoked. You must vacate the property by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Sunday, February 1st. 2. Cease commercial activity. You are hereby notified to cease all commercial activity, photography, and marketing associated with Mirth Coast Wellness on this property. You do not have authorization to list, rent, or advertise this location. 3. Invoice reversal. You are required to reverse all unauthorized charges made to my personal accounts for coastal event rentals and other vendors within 48 hours. Failure to do so will result in a police report for credit card fraud. 4. Guest limit. Effective immediately. No further persons are permitted on the property. The current occupancy exceeds the association limits. Any fines incurred will be billed to you directly. I read it over. It was not a letter from a sister. It was a letter from a property management company. I printed 2 copies. I signed them both. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from the adrenaline of finally cutting the cord. I walked into the living room. The lighting was golden. The table was set with flowers I had not bought and food I had not cooked. Kelsey was standing at the head of the table, holding a glass of champagne. The investors were looking up at her with adoring expressions. And that is why Astor Cove is just the beginning. Kelsey was saying. I walked right up to her. I did not wait for a pause. I did not say excuse me. I placed the paper on the table in front of her. It landed on top of a linen napkin. What is this? Kelsey asked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Read it, I said. She picked it up. She scanned the first few lines. I watched her face. I watched the color drain out of it, followed by a rush of furious red. She looked up at me. The investors were watching. The friends were watching. You cannot be serious, she whispered. I am serious. I said, you have until 10 tomorrow, and the listing comes down tonight. Kelsey looked at the paper, then at the room. She realized she was losing the narrative. She realized she could not charm her way out of a written eviction notice served in front of her money men. So she did the only thing she had left. She pulled the ripcord on the nuclear option. She burst into tears. It was a masterful performance. She dropped the paper, covered her face with her hands, and let out a sob that sounded shattered and heartbroken. Nora, she wailed. How could you? The room went deadly silent. I am just trying to help you, she sobbed, looking around at her friends, pleading for their support. I planned this whole beautiful weekend to celebrate you, to help you feel less alone, and you are kicking us out? You are treating me like a criminal? She turned to the investors, tears streaming down her face. I am so sorry, she choked out. My sister. She has been having a really hard time. She is having a breakdown. I tried to protect her, but she is not well. The air in the room shifted instantly. The investors looked at me with sudden alarm. The friends looked at me with disgust. I was no longer the uptight owner. I was the unstable, cruel sibling who was attacking a woman who was just trying to spread love. I felt the social pressure forming like a net, tightening around me. Dude, seriously? The guy named Javi said. Standing up, she is crying. Back off. You need to leave her alone, Sarah added, glaring at me. Can't you see she is stressed enough? I stood my ground. I did not apologize. I did not try to explain. The paper explains it, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Read it if you want to know the truth. Kelsey wailed louder, collapsing into her chair. Talia and Chloe rushed to comfort her, rubbing her back and shooting daggers at me. She is ruining everything, Kelsey sobbed into Talia's shoulder. I worked so hard. I turned to walk away. I had served the notice. I had done my job. But before I could leave the room, there was a knock at the door. It was not a polite knock. It was 3 hard, authoritative raps. The room froze. Kelsey stopped crying instantly, her head snapping up. I walked to the door. I checked the camera feed on my phone. It was Rowan Pike, and he was not alone. There were 2 other people with him, members of the association board, wearing polo shirts with the crest on the pocket. I opened the door. Ms. Turner? Rowan asked. He was a tall man with a face that looked like it had been carved out of driftwood. He held a clipboard. Yes, I said. We have received 3 more complaints in the last hour. He said, the music, the commercial lighting visible from the beach, and the parking situation. He gestured to the driveway, where the cars were blocking the sidewalk. We are issuing a citation, he said, and we are scheduling a hearing for the board to review your usage privileges. Kelsey appeared at my elbow. She had wiped her tears. She pushed past me, flashing a tremulous, brave smile at Rowan. Hi, she said, breathless. I am so sorry. We are just having a family dinner. My sister is a new owner, and we got a little carried away celebrating. We will move the cars right now. Please, we do not need a hearing. It is just a misunderstanding. She touched Rowan's arm, a light, flirtatious graze. Rowan did not smile. He looked at her hand, then at her face. You are not the owner, are you? He asked. I am. I am handling the property, she said. I am Kelsey. I stepped forward. I moved in front of her. I blocked her from Rowan. Officer Pike, I said. He looked at me. My name is Nora Turner. I am the sole owner. I held up a folder I had brought with me from the office nook. Here is the log of unauthorized guests. I said, here are the invoices for the commercial equipment that was rented without my consent. Here is the copy of the eviction notice I just served to Ms. Turner 5 minutes ago. I handed him the papers. I am formally requesting that the association document that these violations were committed by an unauthorized tenant who is currently under notice to vacate. Kelsey gasped. Nora! Rowan took the papers. He looked at them. He looked at the guest count. He looked at the timestamp on the notice. He looked at Kelsey. The charm offensive died in her throat. Ms. Turner, Rowan said to me, if you have served notice, that helps your case. But the violations are attached to the deed. You are responsible for clearing the property. I understand. I said, they are leaving tomorrow at 10. If they are not gone, I will be calling the police to enforce a trespassing order. Rowan nodded. We will hold off on the hearing request until noon tomorrow. He said, if the cars are gone and the equipment is gone, we will keep it to a fine. If they are still here, we go to the board. Thank you. I said. He turned and walked away. I closed the door and turned around. The entire room was staring at me. The investors looked horrified. The friends looked stunned. Kelsey looked like I had shot her. I had publicly contradicted her. I had handed over evidence against her. I had aligned myself with the authorities instead of the family. The investors stood up. I think we should go. The linen suit man said. No, Kelsey cried, rushing toward them. No, wait, it is just a formality. She is confused. We do not do business with confused ownership, the man said cold, pulling his arm away from her reach. Call us when you actually have a venue. They walked out the sliding door, stepping over the cables of the lighting rig. The party dissolved. The air went out of the room. The friends started whispering, gathering their phones, moving away from the table. I walked into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. Kelsey followed me. She cornered me by the refrigerator. Her face was inches from mine. The tears were gone. The charm was gone. There was only a feral, terrified rage. You think you are winning? She hissed. I am not trying to win. I said, I am trying to survive you. You stupid bitch, she whispered. You don't even know what I had to promise to get out of what I am in. I looked at her. Her eyes were wide, the pupils dilated. What are you talking about? I asked. I took money. Nora, she said, her voice shaking. I took deposits for retreat starting next month. I spent it. I spent it on the branding. I spent it on the website. If I do not deliver this location, they are going to sue me. They are going to come after me. She grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my skin. I am not just losing a business, she said. I am going to jail for fraud if I cannot make this happen. I need this house. I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at the desperation in her face. It wasn't just entitlement. It wasn't just narcissism. It was a Ponzi scheme collapsing in real time, and she had tried to use my foundation to shore up her ruin. I pulled my arm away. Then you better start packing, I said, because you are not taking me down with you. I walked away, leaving her standing in the ruin of her dinner party, but as I walked down the hall, I felt a cold dread settling in my bones. She was desperate. She had taken money she couldn't pay back, and desperate people did not just leave quietly at 10 in the morning. They burned things down on their way out. I woke before the sun did. The sky outside was a bruised purple, hovering somewhere between night and morning. My internal alarm clock, wired by 3 days of adrenaline and cortisol, jerked me awake at 4 in the morning. The house was silent, but it felt porous. The sense of safety I had felt on that first night, the locked doors, the ownership, the solitude, was gone. I felt like I was sleeping in a train station. I walked out of my bedroom, wrapping my robe tight around me. I went to the kitchen to get water, and a draft hit my ankles. Cold, damp air. I followed it to the back door. It was unlocked. Not just unlocked, but slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The sliding track gritted with sand. I looked down at the floor. A trail of wet, sandy footprints led from the deck, across the hardwood, and disappeared down the hallway toward the guest rooms. I pulled out my phone and checked the camera log from the entryway. Motion detected, 2:14 a.m. Motion detected, 3:05 a.m. Motion detected, 3:45 a.m. People had been coming and going all night, while I slept behind a barricaded door. My sister and her friends had treated my home like a 24-hour venue. They had wandered onto the beach, tracked the ocean back inside, and left the door open to the elements. It was a small detail compared to the fraud and the theft, but it broke something in me. It was the ultimate disrespect. They did not care if I was safe. They did not care if the pipes froze or if a stranger walked in. To them, this was not a home. It was a container for their experience. I locked the door. The latch clicked with a finality that echoed in the empty room. I made coffee, moving quietly. I did not want to wake them. I wanted this last hour of silence before the deadline hit. 10 o'clock. That was the time I had put on the notice. At 6 o'clock. My phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject: Setup confirmation. Pop-up brunch. From the Salty Spoon Catering Konas. I frowned. I did not know the Salty Spoon. I opened the email. Hi, Nora. Just confirming our team will be there at 8 a.m. to set up the mimosa bar and crepe station on the deck. We have the guest count at 25 as discussed. See you soon? 25? I stared at the number. Kelsey had not canceled the events. She had doubled down. She had invited 13 more people for a brunch that was supposed to start 2 hours before my eviction deadline, and she had done it in my name. Hi, Nora. The vendor thought I was the one organizing it. I scrolled down the email chain. There, at the bottom, was a message sent from an email address that looked like mine but wasn't. Nora, Turner, designmail.com. My actual email was Nora Turner Creative. She had created a fake account to impersonate me and authorize the vendor. Yes, approved. The fake Nora had written, "The owner is fully on board. Please send the invoice to the house address." My hands did not shake this time. The anger had crystallized into something cold and hard, like sea glass. I heard footsteps behind me. Kelsey shuffled into the kitchen. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, her skin sallow. The manic energy of the previous night had curdled into a hungover exhaustion. She went straight to the fridge, ignoring me. "Cancel the brunch," I said. She froze, her hand on the refrigerator door handle. She did not turn around. "What?" she croaked. "The Salty Spoon," I said. "The crepe station. The 25 people coming at 8. Cancel it." She turned slowly. She leaned back against the fridge, crossing her arms. She looked like a cornered animal, tired, dangerous, and utterly without options. "I cannot," she said. "Why?" I asked. "Because you promised the investors?" They left. Kelsey. They walked out. There is no one left to impress. "It is not about the investors," she said. Her voice was flat, stripped of the usual bubbly affect. "Then what is it?" I asked. "Why are you doing this? Why are you inviting strangers to my house when you are being evicted?" She rubbed her face with her hands. She let out a long, ragged sigh. "Because I owe them money," she whispered. I stared at her. "Who?" "The guy who owns the catering company," she said, "and the guy who owns the rental place, and the investors." She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "I took deposits. Nora, I took pre-sale money for Mirth Coast memberships. I spent it. I spent it on the launch party in the city. I spent it on the website. I spent it on my rent. I am broke. I have negative $400 in my account." She laughed. A brittle, hysterical sound. "The vendor isn't coming just to serve food. He is coming because I promised him this gig as a down payment on what I owe him from the last retreat. If I cancel, he goes to small claims court. If the investors find out I do not have a location, they go to the police. I promised them access to the house to buy time. I just needed one successful weekend. If I could get the content, if I could show the momentum, I could get the next round of funding and pay everyone back." She stepped toward me, her hands out. "I am not trying to steal your house because I am greedy. Nora, I am doing it because I am drowning. I need this. I need you to just let me have this morning. Let the brunch happen. Let me get the photos. Then I can pay them off." I looked at her. I saw the sister I had grown up with, the one who always forgot her homework, who always needed a ride, who always had a crisis that required my intervention. I had spent my life fixing her messes. I had lent her money I never saw again. I had lied to our parents to cover for her. My therapist had called it borrowed crisis. Kelsey created the chaos. But I was the one who paid the emotional toll. I was the one who lost sleep. I was the one who felt the panic. She borrowed my stability to survive her own recklessness, and she never paid it back with interest. She only paid it back with more chaos. And now, she wanted to borrow my home. She wanted to borrow my legal standing. She wanted to borrow my name to commit fraud. I felt a wave of grief wash over me. It was heavy and suffocating. I was grieving the sister I wanted, the one who would come to my beach house to toast my success and sleep on an air mattress and laugh about old times. But that sister did not exist. There was only this person, this desperate, manipulative person who saw me as a resource to be mined. "I cannot help you," I said quietly. "Nora, please," she begged, her eyes filling with tears. "I will go to jail." "Do you want your sister to go to jail?" "I do not want you to go to jail." I said, "But I'm not going to join you there. And that is what this is. Kelsey, identity theft, fraud, trespassing. If I let this brunch happen, I am an accomplice." I walked past her to the counter where I had left my folder of evidence. "Wake everyone up," I said. "What?" "Wake them up, now, or I will turn on the fire alarm." She stared at me, assessing my resolve. She saw something in my face she had never seen before. She saw the end of the line. She turned and ran down the hallway. 10 minutes later, the living room was full of groggy, confused people. They were wrapped in blankets, rubbing their eyes. The air smelled of stale alcohol and unwashed bodies. I stood by the fireplace. I did not look like a victim. I had dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt. I had shoes on. I was ready for business. Kelsey stood off to the side, biting her thumbnail, her eyes darting around the room. "What is going on?" Javi asked, yawning. "Is the brunch here?" "There is no brunch," I said. My voice was calm, projected clearly into the silent room. "I am canceling the event," I continued, "and I'm asking all of you to leave, immediately." A murmur of protest went through the group. "Dude, it is 7 in the morning. Someone complained. I held up the folder. This weekend was not a family getaway. I said, it was a business operation that none of you consented to be a part of, and that I certainly did not consent to. I opened the folder. I pulled out the papers one by one. "This is an invoice for $2,000 of rental equipment charged to my credit card without my permission," I said, holding up the coastal event rental sheet. I pulled out the next one. "This is a draft listing for this house on a vacation rental site, listing me as a host for Mirth Coast Wellness. I never agreed to this." I pulled out the next one. "This is a log of a call to my mortgage lender, attempting to access the equity in this home by someone claiming to be me." The room went deadly quiet. The sleepy irritation vanished, replaced by a tense, uncomfortable awareness. People shifted their weight. They looked at Kelsey. "Kelsey, what is she talking about?" Talia asked. Her voice was small. "She is lying," Kelsey said, but her voice lacked conviction. "She is twisting everything." I pulled out the final piece of paper, a printout of the email to the Salty Spoon. "And this," I said, "is an email sent this morning from a fake account using my name, authorizing a catering event for 25 people. I looked at the group. Kelsey brought you here not to party, but to populate a stage set. She is selling memberships to a retreat center she does not own. She owes money to the vendors she is hiring, and she is using my identity to cover her tracks." I turned to Talia. "You thought I was a partner?" I asked. "I am not. I am a victim of identity theft, and if you stay here, you are trespassing on a property that is currently under investigation by the association board." Talia looked at Kelsey. She looked at the papers in my hand. She looked at the fear in Kelsey's eyes. "Oh my God. Talia whispered. She turned to me. I did not know. She said, I swear. She told us you were the co-founder. She said you were just shy about the business side. I know. I said, she lied to you too. The social shield cracked. The unity of the group, the US against the uptight sister dynamic, shattered. They were not cool kids fighting a buzzkill anymore. They were props in a con. And they knew it. I am leaving, Javi said abruptly. He stood up and started walking toward the bedroom. I am not getting involved in fraud. Me too, Sarah said. This is messed up. Kelsey. Kelsey watched them turn on her. Her face twisted. The desperation I had seen in the kitchen spiked into something frantic. She was losing the audience. She was losing the cover. Wait, she screamed. She ran to her bag, which was sitting on the console table. She rummaged through it frantically, tearing papers out, throwing lipstick and keys onto the floor. She pulled out a document. It was blue-backed, official-looking. She held it up like a shield. She is the liar, Kelsey shouted. She agreed to this. I have proof. She thrust the paper toward Talia. Look, she signed it. It is a shared use agreement. She gave me the rights to the property for 12 months in exchange for equity in the company. Talia hesitated. She looked at the paper. I walked over. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I knew I hadn't signed anything. Let me see that, I said. Kelsey pulled it back. No, you will rip it up. I stepped closer. I grabbed the corner of the document. We wrestled for it for a second. A pathetic, silent struggle in the middle of the living room. Before she let go, I looked at the document, shared property use and equity agreement. It was dated 2 weeks ago. It outlined a partnership where I contributed the real estate and Kelsey contributed the intellectual property, and there, at the bottom, was my signature. It was a good forgery. It looked like the way I signed checks, but it was the stamp next to it that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a notary stamp, a round, official seal that verified the signatures were authentic. Elaine Turner, Notary Public, State of New York. I stared at the stamp. The name was upside down, but I knew it. I knew the specific smudge of ink on the edge because my mother's stamp was old and the rubber was worn. My mother. The phone call from the night before echoed in my head. Just let her have this weekend. Did you help her? She hadn't just hung up because she was annoyed. She had hung up because she was guilty. She had notarized a forged signature. She had used her professional license to help Kelsey steal my house. She had chosen which daughter to protect, and she had chosen the one who needed the lie to survive. I felt the room tilting. The betrayal was so physical, I almost dropped the paper. It wasn't just Kelsey. It was the whole system. The whole family dynamic was built to enable her, to prop her up, even if it meant cannibalizing me. You got Mom to stamp this, I whispered. Kelsey's face was defiant, but her chin trembled. Mom knows I need this, she said. Mom believes in me, unlike you. She broke the law for you. I said, this is a felony. Kelsey, for both of you. She shrugged. A jerky, terrified motion. It is just paper. Nora, it just needs to hold up until I get the funding. Then we tear it up. No one gets hurt. No one gets hurt, I repeated, except me. At that exact moment, a siren chirped outside. Everyone froze. I looked out the window. A white patrol car from the Astor Dunes Community Association had pulled up behind the black SUVs, and getting out of the car was Rowan Pike. He was not alone. 2 other men in blazers, the board members, were with him. They walked up the driveway with a grim, bureaucratic purpose. They were early. They weren't waiting for noon. The doorbell rang. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent room. Kelsey looked at the door. She looked at me. The defiance drained out of her, leaving her looking small and young and terrified. They are here, she whispered. I looked at the forged document in my hand. I looked at the friends scrambling to zip their suitcases. I looked at my sister, who had burned everything we had to keep herself warm. I walked to the door. I opened it. Rowan Pike stood there. He looked past me, into the chaos of the living room. Ms. Turner, he said. We received a report of a commercial catering truck attempting to enter the private road. The driver claimed he had authorization from the owner for a ticketed event. He held up a clipboard. This is a formal notice of a compliance hearing. The board is moving to revoke your access privileges immediately pending an investigation into unlicensed commercial activity. He handed me the paper. I took it. I felt the weight of it. This was it. The mark on my record. The stain on the house. I turned back to the room. Kelsey was standing by the fireplace. She was shaking. I walked over to the table where my phone was. I picked it up. I dialed my mother. I put it on speaker. I turned the volume all the way up. The room was silent. Even the friends stopped packing to listen. It rang 3 times. Hello? Elaine's voice was anxious. She must have been waiting for news. Mom, I said. Nora? Is everything okay? Did the brunch start? I am standing here with Kelsey, I said, and with the Community Association board members who are serving me with a legal notice. There was a silence on the line. And I am holding a document. I continued. A shared property use agreement. It has my signature on it, and it has your notary stamp on it. Kelsey made a small, whimpering sound. I need you to tell me the truth. Mom, I said, and everyone here is listening. Did you notarize this document? Did you watch me sign it? The silence stretched. It was heavy and thick. It lasted 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Nora, please. My mother's voice came through, thin and tinny. We just wanted to help her. She was in so much trouble. So you forged it? I asked. I stamped it, she whispered. To give her something to show the investors. It wasn't supposed to be real. Nora, it was just for show. I closed my eyes. Thank you, I said. That is all I needed to know. I hung up. I turned to Kelsey. It is over, I said. I turned to Rowan Pike. I handed him the blue-backed document. This is a forgery, I said. My mother just confirmed it on the speaker. This is the evidence of the fraud you are investigating. It was created by Kelsey Turner to misrepresent her ownership of this property. Rowan took the document. He looked at it. He looked at Kelsey. I am not the one running a business here, I said. I am the one blowing the whistle. Rowan nodded slowly. If this is forged, he said, then you are the victim here, Ms. Turner. But she needs to leave, now, or we call the county sheriff. I looked at Kelsey. You heard him. I said. Kelsey looked at me. She looked at the friends who were turning their backs on her. She looked at the house she had tried to steal. And then she started to scream. It wasn't a word. It was just a sound of pure, frustrated rage. She grabbed a vase from the mantel, the one she had moved to fix the flow, and threw it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. Get out, she screamed at me. You selfish, jealous bitch. You ruined everything. I did not flinch. I watched her unravel. I watched the last of her power dissolve into a tantrum. I walked to the front door and held it open. Goodbye, Kelsey, I said, one by one. The friends filed out. They didn't look at her. They looked at the ground. They dragged their suitcases down the driveway. Past the association officers, past the neighbors watching from their porches. Kelsey was the last to go. She grabbed her bag. She walked to the door. She stopped in front of me. Her face was streaked with tears and mascara. I will never forgive you for this, she hissed. I know, I said, and I will never let you do it again. She walked out. I watched her get into her SUV. I watched the engine start. I watched the caravan of black cars reverse out of my driveway and disappear down the road. Rowan Pike stood on the porch. We will still need to have that hearing. Ms. Turner, he said, to clear the record. I know. I said, I will be there. He nodded and walked back to his car. I closed the door. I locked it. I threw the deadbolt. The house was silent. The sand was still on the floor. The vase was still shattered in the corner. The stain was still on the bench. I walked into the kitchen. I picked up the bottle of wine I had opened that first night, a lifetime ago. I poured the stale wine down the sink. I leaned against the counter and looked out at the ocean. The sun was fully up now. The water was a brilliant, blinding blue. I was alone. My family was gone. Not just physically, but entirely. I had severed the limb to save the body. I felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. It was the quiet, heavy feeling of survival. I had my house. I had my peace. But as I looked at the empty room, I realized that the silence I had bought was not the silence of rest. It was the silence of the aftermath. And for the first time in 33 years, I was the only one standing in it. Thank you for listening to Nora's story. It was a journey about boundaries, betrayal, and the cost of peace. I would love to hear where you are listening from. Please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more dramas about family, justice, and reclaiming your life, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. Share your thoughts in English in the comments. What would you have done in Nora's place?